Hello, and I do appreciate the time this afternoon. Over the next 45 minutes, I do want to deliver the plan that was asked of me. Before I kick this off, though, I do want to say that I know we're going to spend the next 45 minutes trying to figure out if I'm a good fit. Um, just got to say that I've done a lot of prep over the past 3 weeks. And the more I learn about Google, the company, and this position specifically, the more excited I've gotten. So I certainly hope that at the end of this 45 minutes, we determine I'm a good fit. Now, with that, I was given kind of vague requirements, basically to create a plan for these four things: running the business, scaling the team, caring for the people, and then how would I personally develop my skill set for people management. So what I actually did is I will cover those four things, but I started writing down on a whiteboard kind of, things I wanted to make sure that I got across. And I saw this natural flow into four different bullets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a short introduction for myself, and then I'm going to talk about the customer, the team, development, and the business. It seems to me like everything I was writing down had kind of this natural segregation into those four quadrants. So I'd love to step through those four slides after I go through a brief intro. Does that sound all right? I promise I'll hit those four bullets and make sure that I cover them, but I'm just going to do it with a little bit different flow than was given to me. So with an introduction, obviously my name is Mick Prue. I've been in technology really since I graduated high school. I worked for a company called Tandem Computers that was subsequently purchased by Compaq and then by HP. What's unique about that is I came in on literally on the entry level as a parts guy, and then quickly got promoted to hardware engineer, where I was actually fixing the servers and the storage. And then became a systems engineer. Did that for a while, and then an opportunity came up to become an account manager, and I took that opportunity. I'd always loved the technology and the sales together, so I thought maybe the natural progression was to get to sales. Now, I came to a point where I did kind of this self review of where I was and what I was doing, and I came to the conclusion that although I do love sales, period. I felt like I was kind of taking two steps back away from the technology. So an opportunity came to go work for EMC as a systems engineer, and I went over and took that role. Within a year, I became an SE manager, and I started managing a team. We were growing very fast at the time, so there was constant hiring, which meant there were constant opportunities. And as soon as that first management opportunity came up, they kind of tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to lead a team. So I did that, not knowing that would be really what I would do for the next 16 so years. So I've actually been managing SE teams for the last 16 years. Not the last 16 years, but 16 out of the last 20 years. And it seems like a long time, but it was really 6 different teams that I led with 6 different territories and sometimes 6 different verticals. They were all enterprise accounts, though, so it was always enterprise focused. And there were, like I said, across all these verticals, including telco, media, and entertainment was where I spent a majority of the time when I first hired on. But then I took general territories where, we had financial healthcare customers. And for 3-4 years, I actually also led a team that was focused on SLED accounts in the West. The last 2 years, I've been working on this Dell Synergy team at VMware. And what's interesting about that is it was newly formed. So we were a brand new team. We had to figure out how we were going to collaborate and communicate. But we were focused on really creating solutions for customers based off of components from a bunch of different Dell Technologies portfolios. So my responsibility as technical director for the West was to get people in the room, all these pre-sales technical folks and solution architects, listen to a customer's problem, and then put together the best technical solution, regardless of the portfolio. So as you can imagine, there were components that sometimes conflicted with each other. But what we would do is the first thing that we'd write on the whiteboard is customer. And, if you keep focused on, creating the right technical solution based off of the customer requirements, I find that at least from a pre-sales perspective, everybody was very focused on doing the right thing, and we would eventually get to that place. So I've done that for the last 2 years, and I love it. I'm certainly not running away from anything. This is a very interesting role, but I've been doing that job for 2 years, and actually, we've been doing pretty well, and I've been quite happy. I don't know that I would say that, but we'll try it. I try to have good work-life balance. So other passions I have are around family, traveling together with family. Love to play golf, into fitness, and then recently picked up yoga. Technology is, just doing home automation stuff. Me and the kids are always doing things around home automation. We created a Photon app, for example, to control our garage door opener. Doing things like that, just like staying close to the technology. Before I go on, do you guys have any questions? Are there any areas that you'd like me to elaborate on? Because I do want to make sure that we get through the next 4 slides. Okay, cool. So what I do think I bring to the party is obviously experience. I've been leading pre-sales technical teams for a long time. But I also bring empathy to this. And it's something that most of the folks that I work with recognize. I really do try to understand everybody on the team, understand the customer, understand the sales reps. I try to get everybody's point of view and really take that into consideration when working through challenges or even when things are going well, right? To make sure they continue to go well. So that empathy really, for me, I think is a core strength that I bring to the team, or that I would bring to the team. Also around technology, always curious. That's what's actually excited me over the last 3 weeks, is learning as much as I have about GCP and just Google in general. I love learning about new things. And then creativity there, we can talk about it a little bit on the team slide, but in that leadership role, there have been times when I've been challenged with maybe a limited amount of headcount, but we definitely need to figure out how we cover our area a little bit better. So getting creative with that, getting creative not only with how we organize our people, but how we educate our people, and how we create a sense of community so that those folks want to continue working on the team. So you have to get creative, especially when you're growing really, really fast. So that's another thing that I think I bring. And with that, we'll go ahead and kick off with the customer. I do think the customer is the first and obviously the most important thing. So how I would ramp up is, the first thing I'd want to do is obviously learn where the territory is and who the customers are. But then I'd also like to figure out is within that customer base, are there existing relationships that I can immediately leverage? And I know for sure that there are some here in Denver and some in Phoenix, where they're key accounts for Google, and I do have relationships there, and I'd love to leverage those from the get-go. I think it does a couple things. I think from a customer perspective, they get the opportunity to ask me, why I decided to do what I did around working on the Google team. But I also get a chance to talk to them about kind of their perception of what they're doing, where they're going, and how they think Google may or may not be able to help them. So that perspective as a new person, I think is, you've only got one time you can play that. And I'd love to play that with those existing relationships. Now, before I hit the next button, my assumption is that you would like this CE manager to have those type of relationships at kind of a higher level. I honestly believe that there are relationships that it's good for sales folks to have, and there are relationships that it's good for the CEs to have. But the CE leadership is kind of a unique one in a sense that, sometimes you have to make some decisions, and they're going to be pushed down, from an executive level down. And it's kind of nice to have somebody on that relationship, because it allows the CEs to be independent sometimes of that, of those directives. So if that's the case, then what I'd love to do is also figure out from the team, from both sales and CEs, are there some key relationships that it makes sense for me to go in there and see if I can't stir something up, hopefully a new relationship or a relationship that the previous CE manager had, where it makes sense for me to go in and kind of engage. And what I would want to do there is I would want to focus, and that's kind of the value I think I bring, is not focus on just the technology and how cool it is, but focus how we connect that technology to the business. And then demonstrate to them value, right? I don't just want to be an empty suit or an empty hoodie or whatever. I want to actually show up, listen to the customer, and I'd love to walk away with actions and takeaways and commits, so that I can demonstrate value to the clients by actually listening to them, figuring out where they want to go, and following through on my own commitments. So from a customer perspective, my goal would be, within that first 3 months, I would love to either leverage relationships that I already have or create new relationships. But my goal would be 3 of them within the first 3 months. That's in addition to all the other noise that happens when you ramp up, but I'd love to get engaged with customers quickly. Does that make sense? And is that in line with what your expectations are? Good, good. Now team, so this is the one where really 2 of those 4 bullets was, right? How would you scale a team, and how would you make sure you're taking care of your people? I've always been of the mind that, the pyramid's turned upside down, and really, from a leadership perspective, it's up to us to kind of support the teams that we're leading. They don't necessarily support us. They don't work for us. We work for them. But it starts with one very key philosophy, and that's really hire really, really good technical people, and then get out of their way. Not only get out of their way, but get other things out of their way that's not you. It's my expectation with this role that there's going to be a lot of hiring, that there's going to be significant growth in this team over the next few years. So this hiring piece really does become critical. So if we find all these good technical leaders, and I call them technical leaders because what I would be looking for is people that not only have the technical chops to go out there and do the job, but ones that are also really good at what they do to the point that they make everybody around them better. Not only does that obviously have an exponential impact on the team, but it also helps you identify who the next true leader would be. If another management position comes up, another leadership position comes up, you now know on your team who is a great candidate or who could be developed into that role. Always be hiring, right? So one of the things I would do initially is build a really good pipeline based off of the profile that we would be hiring into for the CE position. I would rely on personal relationships. I would ask the customer. I would ask peers. But I would also go to meetups. I would also, obviously look at LinkedIn profiles and do all that other stuff. But to me, hiring, at least right now, seems to me like it would be a critical part in an area where I would spend a majority of my time. So I would want to, quickly develop that pipeline so that when we do have opportunities that open up, there's 2 or 3 people that we're familiar with that we might want to consider for those positions. And then after you hire them, obviously you got to get them into a community where they're going to thrive. I'm not going to make the assumption that environment doesn't exist today. If it exists and it's good, obviously I would embrace that and I would promote that. But if it's not, I would do everything I can to kind of create that environment so that people feel motivated to do what they need to do in order to be successful. One of the things that I think is really important and something that I've always tried to do in previous positions is never say no. So if people are really stretching me and they want to go to for me, 5 years ago, it was people that wanted to go to DevOps conferences. And I tried to, in my head, figure out, okay, how do I connect DevOps with selling them hardware? But I was making the wrong connection. It's how do I connect DevOps with challenging these folks, allowing them to grow, and putting them in a position where they can become what they want to be instead of who they are. So I would always want to support those opportunities to develop themselves and be challenged. So as far as a plan with how I would quickly engage, let me first ask before I go on, how to scale a team, right? I think is all about hiring the right people and then having an organizational structure where they're doing what they love to do. So that's how I would scale the team. I would make sure that as we bring people into the business, that we're focused on making sure that they're a good fit initially, but also making sure that we're challenging them to the point where they feel like they're doing everything they need to be successful. So I would quickly connect with all the team, the CEs on the team. I already know. I know Ed. I've met Toby. I know Mark really well. So I feel like I've kind of got a jump on at least understanding who's on the team now. But for the folks I don't know, I'd love to really get to know them a little bit better and really understand what motivates them. Money is a motivator, but I think once you really start talking to people, there are 3 things that they really want to do that motivates them to get up in the morning. One is, kind of having this sense of autonomy where they feel like they kind of have a lot of control over what they do and how they do it as long as we get the desired outcome. So I'd love to promote that type of an environment. Mastery means that there's a desire for people to just be really good at what they do.